bringing people together is such a positive experience. And that's what networking should feel like. It should feel like an opportunity to leave more inspired than when you came into the room. It should feel like connection.
Hello and welcome to Diverse, a Society of Women Engineers podcast. I'm your host for this episode, Larry Guthrie, Director of Content Strategy at SWE. We're coming to you live from the We24 Diverse Podcast Studio here at SWE's annual conference in Chicago. Today, I'm joined by Nicole Woon, Senior Product Manager at Microsoft, and Emily Carney, Senior Manager of Site Project Management at Genezen. And we're here to dive into how to make networking more fun and less awkward with some lessons they've learned from playing board games. And I know just the thought of networking can send some, myself included, into a little bit of a fit of anxiety. So before my hands get any sweatier, let's just jump in and hear more about how everyone can win at this networking game. Welcome, Nicole and Emily.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.
We are thrilled, and I can't wait to hear more. So I'd love to start off first by just having you share a little bit more about yourselves and what your journey with networking looked like before you learned how to make it fun. Emily, let's start with you.
Awesome. Thanks, Larry. Hi, I'm Emily Carney, and my STEM journey started with a passion for the environment that was inspired by my mom. We would always do trash pickups, and also influenced by my dad, who is a food chemist, and my grandfather, who was an engineer at an aerospace company. With this, I went off to Tufts University and I got a degree in environmental engineering and jumped into a big organization in the engineering space where I worked on the inside, trying to be more environmentally friendly and a good steward of the environment while working at a big corporation. That experience got me hooked on manufacturing, and since then I've worked in that company for a long time in industries from aviation to healthcare and currently into biotech. Along the way, I went back to Tufts University to get a degree in engineering management, go jumbos. I became a double jumbo, and that gave me a lot of the business skills that I've brought into manufacturing operations today. I currently work at Genezen, where we're manufacturing cell and gene therapies for rare diseases. This is super complex work, and it pulls to my favorite thing to do, which is problem solving and continuous improvement. So in the spirit of continuous improvement, I think back to my first networking event. That was at Tufts, and it was a formal situation where the alumni were brought back to network with the engineering students. I remember my career counselor encouraged me to go. I didn't know what to say to anyone. We had these colored dots to at least find someone with our major related to them. But other than that, I didn't know what to do. She counseled me and said, this is just the practice year. So you get to come back as an upperclassman and do it again. The other thing I'd like to say, and it does fast forward to one of the games that we'll share there, is I wish I knew about networking to be more interested in the other person and find the shared interests than be worried about what I was trying to say when I was in those shoes. There could have been easier ways to enter the conversations with alumni, like your favorite dining hall or what dorm you started in, that would have developed that common ground, as opposed to trying to ask them about what their day-to-day job was like or asking them for advice on what I should have done with my career. So looking back now, that's the first pace where I realized there's fun conversations you can start that are a lot easier for both sides of the conversation. You don't have to be focused on the professional aspects.
Yeah, that sounds really interesting. I can't wait to kind of see where you went from there. And Nicole, what about you?
Hi, everyone. My name is Nicole. I am, again, super excited to be here. For my STEM journey, it started when I went to my dad's Take Your Kid to Work Day at the Aerospace Corporation back in third grade. And so it's been really cool to just have that engineering influence in my life and to be able to pursue that in my career. I went to the University of Pennsylvania and actually did a dual degree program called the Management and Technology program. So it was one degree in the business school and one degree in the engineering school. And so it was really cool to see that blend of business and technology come together. So I have 2 bachelors, one in bioengineering and one in management with a concentration in entrepreneurship and innovation. And then I saved for my master's in mechanical engineering. I ended up joining Microsoft out of college and have been there in a few different roles for the last 10 years, and so it's been a wild ride, but really exciting to see how my company has grown and how I've been able to grow my career in that company. For my first networking experience, it was extremely scary and intimidating. When I was at Penn, there is this process that's called OCR, or on-campus recruiting. And so similar to the networking event that Emily had talked about, it's really stressful because you're trying to put yourself out there, be the one that the recruiters or the company representatives recognize. But really, it shouldn't be that intimidating. You're there to learn about them as much as they are there to learn about you. And I think SWE was a really huge part of making me feel more comfortable with that process, because everyone that I've met through the society is there with a shared purpose to lift each other up and make each other feel more comfortable, be able to share best practices and all of that. So hopefully we can jump into a little bit of that in the rest of our talk.
Yes, so definitely, let's jump in. So how did you realize that there was that connection between board games and helping kind of overcome those challenges with networking and make yourselves more comfortable with that process?
Yeah, absolutely. So people don't like networking, but they do like games. And so is there a way that we can bring those together and reframe it so that networking is a positive experience? The other part of it, too, is can we figure out ways to break the taboo of networking, if you get that reference, and make it a less intimidating process? So creating this content really stretched us creatively. And so when we were first coming up with it, we started to think what kind of board games would resonate with our audience and what types of games would we really enjoy playing that we could see a networking connection with. So for example, Ticket to Ride, which is a game that involves you collecting cards with various train cars that help you build routes across a particular map. And so for us, that's kind of the way that we met. We took different paths in SWE and in our careers, but we still were able to overlap in different places and kind of come in and out of each other's lives and still be friends throughout that whole process. And I think that was something that was a really cool connection that we were able to make. The other part, too, is that networking has grown exponentially over the years. You've seen the rise of social media. You've seen how virtual work environments have been more prominent. And that's the same way that game industry has evolved beyond the classics. So it's not just Monopoly, Sorry, or Scrabble. It's more modern board games that really tap into your interests and what you might like to do.
That's really interesting. Nicole, what about you, Emily? Where did this kind of idea come from, and how did it resonate with you? How did you connect with it?
Absolutely. So playing games is some of my favorite memories. Childhood games with family, or then in high school or college doing the board game nights. Bringing people together is such a positive experience. And that's what networking should feel like. It should feel like an opportunity to leave more inspired than when you came into the room. It should feel like connection. And if you're able to draw from your favorite memories of times with your friends or family in situations where you feel comfortable, that might help you feel more comfortable when you're playing a game or you're out networking with your colleagues. I'd say I definitely think the game industry has expanded so much and there's so many choices. The SWE connections, we're here today at the SWE conference, and I used to notify people that I was coming to this conference via Facebook. But now today, that's LinkedIn is a social media form to notify that you're going to be somewhere, and let's connect when we're there.
That makes sense to me, and it's that there's so many connections going on, as you can imagine, with 19,000 people here at We24 this year. So these tips that you're about to give are going to make a huge difference to a lot of our listeners. So I'm excited to hear more about specific suggestions. What are some of the fun networking strategies that you'd recommend to listeners based on that board game connection?
Absolutely. So we thought it might be fun to do a rapid fire style here with some of the games and then some of the attributes that you told us about. What makes networking fun? Let's start with that. One of the games that could make it fun is a game called Unlock, and that's a collaborative game. So the message here is bring a friend, do it together. You don't have to do it alone, and if you're walking with someone you know side by side, you'll feel more comfortable and excited. Maybe even your friend will introduce you and you'll introduce them and share their most positive attributes. And they could be a safety net if you feel uncomfortable. So have fun, get dressed up, or go somewhere out to dinner before or afterwards. Bring your friends to what you're doing.
So a networking buddy that you can tag team with.
Absolutely. If you're going to put your time into it, you might as well do it with people that you enjoy being around.
Makes sense to me.
Another way to make networking effective could be putting a little strategy to it. So some of the board games that are very popular now are games like Settlers of Catan. That's a strategic game, and where that connects to strategy is everyone has different goals, what they're trying to get out of in a networking experience. That you might be looking for a job, something classic, or they might be looking for someone who lives in their area, or they might be looking for a mentor. So how you can make a strategy around networking could be knowing what that goal is for yourself and then putting yourself in a position where those opportunities are more likely to happen. And then another one that we want to talk about is accessible, and that is the game Apples to Apples. It's a pretty popular party game. There's a lot of ways people have house rules on this type of game. And the key message here is it's not about trying to prove how much interesting you are, having the coolest example. You can win the game if you're interested in someone else. So in this game, you're exchanging cards, you're trying to see connections and keywords, and this can be a lot of fun to relate with someone.
It's good stuff.
Want to give a few more examples?
Yeah, sure. So something else that can be really intimidating about networking is you might feel like you have to dress up in business suits and go to a cocktail hour and really prove yourself. But using the example of upwords or bananagrams, which are riffs on the classic word game Scrabble, there's different ways to play, and that's the same thing with networking. There's different ways to network. So it doesn't have to be that you're at this cocktail hour. You might be able to connect with someone through a volunteering event or by going to a SWE conference or doing something where you have a shared interest with each other. The other part is it doesn't even have to be directly facing each other. You might go on a walk together, and that brings up other energy and endorphins, and you're kind of moving towards the same goal physically while being able to still maintain that conversation. There's other ways that you can look at networking, like reciprocity rings, which is a way where you might be able to offer help to someone else, and they might not even know that you have that connection in mind. So that's something that we can dive into a little bit more, but it's really cool to just think about all the different ways that you can approach networking that you might not think are labeled as networking.
That's a good point. And I love that you're talking about making yourself comfortable so that you're in a good place to network, and then giving some strategies on, okay, I'm ready to go. Now, what am I supposed to do next, right? And there were some really wonderful tips there. Now, you were talking about different types of networking, and I'm really curious about how it works with different formats, right? So now, as you mentioned, there's formal versus informal, virtual versus on-site. Do you find that there's some different tips and techniques that work best for those different styles or different scenarios?
Absolutely, Larry. Fundamentally, this types of networking, the principles you want to go behind are all the same. You want to be kind, you want to be respectful, and be interested in others. But different situations, you might have different tools available to you. In a formal networking event, you're focused. You're there knowing that you're going to network. You might be prepared with business cards or resumes, and you might be in a formal mindset. Whereas if you're in an informal networking event, like meeting someone in the parking lot or on the bus ride to the conference, that's an opportunity where you might be able to go with the flow. You don't have everything prepared with you, but you're able to adapt to the situation and uncover some interesting information from others. Virtual and on-site has opened up so many possibilities. There's so many ways to connect on LinkedIn or through virtual conferences, which can be really fun. And you might even find these in your internal company organizations and networks. With that, I think you have to be mindful of not getting distracted. In a virtual setting, there's so many shiny objects that it might be hard to focus, or your attention might be distracted. So you want to be able to talk with the people that you're connecting with virtually.
So it sounds like being intentional when you're, especially in a virtual setting, is really important.
Absolutely. And this ties to one of our myths about networking, which is quantity over quality. One of the games that we reference here is a game called Dominion. And that game is about building a deck. So I want to meet people, and virtually my options are endless. But if I focus on the quantity of people, I might not be engaging with the quality of connections that I really need to help me with my focused area. Dominion's a card game, and the object of the game is to play the cards in a certain way to earn points. And certain cards have more power than other cards. As you collect the cards when you're playing the game, you could dilute your deck with too many cards, and then it makes it confusing to earn those points. So just like that with networking, trying to meet everyone might take too much energy and might not yield the results you're hoping for.
And I would think it could be, especially if you're dipping your toe into the networking pool, right, to having a bunch of interactions, and some of them might not have been so great. Being more intentional and using some of the tips you're talking about ensures that the majority of those interactions are positive, which kind of reinforces that good behavior, right, around, okay, I can do networking. I feel good about this. I'm getting the results I want.
Absolutely. Even one connection is a great connection. You don't have to walk away from a situation with tons of new connections. Just one person that you can stay in touch with and that inspires you will make you feel confident.
That's fantastic advice, Emily. Thank you. I have to ask about probably the most, at least maybe it's just me, but probably the most anxiety-provoking networking event, speed networking sessions. We've heard about them. They're allegedly fun. Nicole, do you have any tips for tackling that? I don't know what you would call it. It could be the best or worst networking experience of your life, but how do we make it the best?
Exactly. I think there's a couple different ways you can approach it. The first is when you are time bound, just keep it simple. You're there for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and so you may have to adapt your communication style to be more direct versus indirect, or you might not be telling your whole life story and you want to get to the point a little bit quicker. And I think if you can come out of it with at least 1 to 2 questions that you knew you wanted to ask and were successful in asking, then that's a really great perspective. Going back to the reframing topic that I had brought up earlier around how can you kind of jazz up networking, I've seen one-on-one speed networking, but I've also seen one-to-many group networking. And I find that is a really effective technique because it doesn't put you on the spot as someone who's asking maybe the primary person at the table the question. In those cases, if you haven't done that type of networking before, generally one person stays at the table and then 5 to 10 may be at that table for 5 to 10 minutes, and then they rotate to the next table. And so I've seen this for customer connections at my workplace. I've seen this in SWE, actually, where people are learning from different disciplines or different SWE leaders. And that's been a really great way because you can still be present and listen, even if you don't know what question to ask. And so it might make you feel more comfortable in learning and being able to engage in the conversation without necessarily having to speak up if that's not something that you're comfortable with. And maybe learn some tactics from people who do speak up, and then you'll know for the next working session as well. So being really intentional about that and just thinking through how can I get the most out of this limited time that I have and bring those lessons into my next networking experience.
So a little bit of preparation, it sounds like, is very helpful, especially with the speed networking. It seems like an exercise in efficiency, coming in with very clear-cut, punchy questions that you know are going to give you the best bang for your buck.
Yeah,
Does
absolutely.
that make sense?
And you're not going to do it right the first time. No one does it right the first time. So it just comes with practice. And maybe you have a negative experience in the beginning, but that just teaches you, okay, I know not to do that next time, or I know how to shift and adapt and change my style for future experiences.
So what I'm hearing there is the big through line, which is true with so many things when you're trying to grow yourself, is grace. Giving yourself grace is a huge piece of this game.
Yes, absolutely.
It's like the get out of jail free card.
Exactly.
Now, circling back, you had mentioned the reciprocity ring, and I don't want to overlook that, and I want to hear more from you on that, Nicole. Can you share more?
Yeah, so this was a really cool technique that I learned in college. I took a class with Adam Grant, who's an organizational psychologist and really well known, I think, in the academic and literary industry. And one of the activities that we did was this reciprocity ring. The process of setting that up was everyone took a big piece of poster paper and wrote something that they wanted to get help with. Maybe they wanted to learn about someone in the theme park industry. Maybe they wanted to figure out how to be more effective as a student that was also balancing a job at the same time. Maybe they wanted to collaborate with someone on a D&I initiative and was looking for contacts there. So everyone writes their requests on these pieces of paper, and then you give time for everyone to just go around the room and tag Post-its, write on that poster paper with any sort of ideas or connections or help that they can provide. So maybe it's someone that they know from their past that could be a great connection. Maybe it's personal experience that they have and they can share more tidbits about it. Whatever is helpful that you have top of mind, it just shows that the greater pool that you have access to, the more insight and input you can get. And so at the end of that session, now you have this beautiful poster paper with all these helpful ideas and ways that you can get started. And I think that's just such a cool option of networking in a safe environment in a way without even having to directly talk with someone. It gives you that chance to start building relationships and get to know a starting place, essentially, so that you can make progress on your goals and whatever you desire. So that's something that I think is really cool that can be done in really any setting, a work setting, a SWE section, academic environment, and so would definitely recommend trying it out if you have a chance.
Yeah, that sounds, and it's almost if you can create your own mental reciprocity ring going forward to where you have your own boards going on while you're talking, if you're able to multitask.
Exactly.
Let's talk about, rubber meets the road, real life, or maybe the game of life examples of putting these strategies to work for both of you. Can you share a moment where you use these techniques in your actual day-to-day and how that worked, how the results, how you implemented it, and what you realized from using the strategies and techniques that you're sharing? Emily, let's start with you.
Early in this podcast, we talked about a game called Dominion, where we said to think about your quality over your quantity. And sometimes we can feel that way about the amount of time we have. At the end of a busy work day, there might not be energy to put effort into networking if it might have unknown potentials for your future. And some of us, we have different life circumstances now that make it easier or harder to go to networking events. When I was younger, I was able to go to lots of things after work, both through SWE or internal company networking events. And now I have other family obligations and choices that make it a little bit more difficult. Using that quality and quantity mindset, we don't want to let it stop you. What you can try to strategize is choosing the things where you already have connections and going back to those familiar places. Locally in Boston, our section has an annual banquet. So I know that if I can go to any event across the year, I'm going to put more effort to make it to the annual banquet because I'll likely see other people who I've met before or who have the same mindset and really deepen those existing connections. Here today at the SWE conference, this is a gold mine because even in the hallway I can run into people that I've met at different sessions or over the years, and a 1-minute interaction is a memory that's created for a future time. When we're walking around the conference today, we're taking lots of selfies and creating those core memories so we can look back, and then if we need to reach out one-on-one, those connections will be there in the future.
That makes perfect sense to me. If you've got limited amount of time, be very strategic about what those moments look like so that you can take full advantage of them, like a SWE event locally or even globally like we are here, or even our locals, the WE locals throughout the year. Love that. Nicole?
Yeah, so when I graduated college, I moved to Boston, and I did not know anybody there. I hadn't met Emily yet, which is where we connected through SWE Boston, but I was really intimidated. I felt like everyone had their own friend circles already, and I didn't quite know how to break in. My work team had a pretty big range of ages and interests, and so I was trying to figure out, how do I find long-lasting friends, or even short-term friends, to be honest. And so I was able to use a few different networking strategies to try and meet different people. So one of them we talked about was Catan, so having a set goal around how you want to approach networking. And for this, I tried to look for others that were around my age or other new hires that were going through a similar career stage. And so I looked at places like SWE, and so that's how I met Emily. I looked at my women's ERG, employee resource group at my workplace, and was able to connect with people there. I went to random young professional networking events in the city and just tried to see if I could meet other people in that way. And so by being more intentional about the types of events that I went to and trying to meet X number of people within a month, that was really helpful. So I at least had a pool to start with, and then could kind of narrow it down. Who did I really connect with and have shared common interests and hobbies with? The other part, too, is that I would try to go to alumni events with friends, so people that I went to Penn with, and then also moved to Boston. So in the way of Unlock, the game that we mentioned, kind of approaching it together and doing networking collaboratively, that was something that was really helpful as well. And then lastly, one game that we didn't mention was Codenames. And so if you haven't played Codenames before, it's a way that you build ties between different words to help your team win the game. And here, I think the lesson to take away is that sometimes your weaker or your more dormant ties may be a really great way to meet new people. So strong ties, for example, might be the ones that are your closest friends or your family members or your day-to-day coworkers. But those weaker or dormant ties might be people you haven't seen for a few years. Maybe you see them once a year at SWE conference. Maybe you worked with them on a team in the past but aren't regularly working with them now. But these are really great people to tap into so that you can tap into their networks and get to know people that they might know. So that's something that I had done when I went to a women's ERG event and I met a particular leader there. Didn't really have a chance to chat with her for 6 months or a year, and I came back to her again later and I was like, hey, do you know any younger new hires or people that might be good people for me to connect with? And she was able to introduce me to a few folks, and a couple of them are still some of my closest friends today. And I think that's just the magic of being able to leverage all aspects of your network, not just the people that you're closest with.
Those are really fantastic examples, and I hope that everyone listening sees that this is not just a theoretical piece, that it really does have some very practical applications, and both of you have realized that with what you're going to be speaking with a little later on in We24 when you present on this topic. I would be remiss, I can't end this chat without asking you the most important question. What exactly are your favorite board games right now?
Absolutely. I'll share. My favorite board game right now is Azul. It is a beautiful, beautiful game that has about building mosaics and using a little bit of strategy there. The pieces feel really nice to touch. They're beautiful colors, and the object of the game is to make a mosaic and earn some points to win the game. I like this one because it's pretty easy to set up, and then it gives you that shortened duration so you can say, let's play it again. The other game that I'm really playing a lot right now is one with my toddler, and it's a wonderful game called First Orchard. It's a collaborative game about helping collect apples into a basket, and that speaks to just learning from a young age that working together can be just as fun as working individually to win a game.
And kind of to that, the whole concept of networking is maybe adding some good apples to your basket, right? What about you, Nicole?
So I'm a big fan of food-related experiences, and that trickles into my interest in food-themed board games. So a couple that I really enjoy. One is called Go Nuts for Donuts. It's by the same game manufacturer as Sushi Go, which is also a great food-themed game. But Go Nuts for Donuts is really fun. It's quick to pick up. Essentially, you're building your assortment of donuts that you want in your collection by choosing from the table, but if you choose the same donut as someone else, that goes into the discard pile. So you have to bring a strategy around what donut you're going to select and hopefully have the most points at the end of the game. So a little bit of that strategy involved there. And then another one that I really enjoy is called Steam Up. It's a dim sum themed board game, and what's really cool about the pieces is that there's an actual rotating table, or Lazy Susan, and so it reminds me of memories growing up going to dim sum with my grandparents and extended family, where you order a bunch of dishes and you get to rotate the table and pick what you want. And so I think that's a really clever and creative way of incorporating culture into a board game and making me have just really fond, nostalgic memories.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much. This has been a really wonderful conversation, and I hope the takeaways there is somebody found a little piece. If you've been a little hesitant, just what's that next step? What can you do to put yourself out there in a comfortable way, or at least in a safe way that you're feeling like, I can do this? And I think you've given us a lot of little tricks and techniques and tips to hopefully empower everybody and make them a little braver, because I think that's important with networking. And most importantly, definitely worth repeating, please, please, please give yourself some grace when you go through this. So thank you again for taking some time to speak with us. And, dare I say we networked a bit today?
I think so.
You got it.
So I'm Larry Guthrie, live at We24, and from all of us at SWE, thank you for listening.